today on Soul Work for Moms. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another season of Soul Work for Moms, the podcast that shares stories of motherhood from all around the world. Being a mom requires a ton of personal and spiritual work, but you are not alone. By listening to the podcast, you'll hear mothers share how they've handled all kinds of different situations in life and how they've grown along the way. You'll also hear from guests who have specific expertise in areas that focus on growth and motherhood. So not only do you get to connect with other moms, you'll also get resources to help you with your own personal soul work along the way. This is the first episode of season 2. I can't wait to start telling you all about today's guest, Maria Emmerich. She's going to share her soul work story of going through the adoption process. But first, I wanted to share with you some clips from an event that I was invited to recently. I was at the My 31 Sisters conference asking mothers the question, what has been the biggest surprise for you since becoming a mom? Take a listen to some of their answers and see if they sound familiar. What has been the biggest surprise for you since becoming a mom?
It's ongoing, and there's never any downtime.
That it wasn't as hard as I made it.
The patience I have learned, and that I can raise a boy.
Having a daughter just like me.
Feeling completely unprepared after feeling so prepared prior to becoming a mother.
I think that I was most surprised that breastfeeding would be so difficult and come with so many complications.
Before I had children, I had this belief that all mothers loved every moment, all the time with their kids. And I came to learn that that wasn't so, but that was also okay, that you enjoy your kids, but did not have to love every moment of being a mother.
The biggest thing that surprised me is how difficult it can be sometimes. And even all the work and the love and the nurturing that you invest, it still doesn't always come out the way you expect it to. And it just some days is hard, but you still love them.
Well, to be completely honest, the one thing that surprised me most about being a mother is that my children actually get on my nerves. I thought that you would unconditionally love your children, which I do. However, there are some days that they just drive me crazy. And although I love them holistically, there are times when they completely annoy me, and I think that's okay.
One of the many things that has surprised me about being a mom is currently I have a 7-month-old, a 7-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And although the 7-month-old needs catered to a lot more, I find that I have a lot more patience with the 7-month-old than the 2 older daughters that are very needy when it comes to getting pretty and wearing skinny jeans and needing their hair half up, half down. And all I have to do for the 7-month-old is give her a bottle and change her diaper and cuddle with her. So, yes, that is the one of the many things, yes.
Okay, there were some reoccurring themes running through those clips, but that was fun. Did any of them sound familiar to you? If you'd like to tell me what the biggest surprise has been for you since becoming a mother, record a voice memo on your phone and email it to Michelle with 2 L's at soulworkformoms.com. That's Michelle at soulworkformoms.com, and I will incorporate it into the show. Today's guest is Maria Emmerich, a wellness expert in nutrition and exercise physiology. Maria is a national and international best-selling author of the Ketogenic Cookbook. She's also authored 8 other books, including several cookbooks and 3 nutritional guidebooks, including Secrets to a Healthy Metabolism. Her newest book is called Quick and Easy Ketogenic Cooking. But the real reason Maria is on the show today is that she's also the mother of 2 beautiful boys, Micah and Kai, and she shares her family's adoption story and what she learned about herself along the way. If you've gone through the adoption process, you'll probably relate to a lot of the things she says. If you're thinking about going through the adoption process, Maria shares some really great advice for you. But even if you have never and will never go through the adoption process yourself, I still suggest you listen because many of the things Maria talks about are universal to being a mother. And she tells us the thing that she really wishes that we would just stop asking her. You might be doing it to other people and not even realizing it. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Maria Emmerich. So where I wanted to start is just to learn about how you even started down the adoption path.
Well, I want to say thank you, Michelle, for having me on your podcast. Our whole adoption process was a really long process, but it was something that I grew up with. And where I went to church, there was a lot of adoptive families, and it was just something that I was encouraged to do. I loved our pastor. He was like just the coolest guy. He lived in Ethiopia for most of his life, and then even after they had their children, they moved back to Ethiopia, and he was a pastor there, and he helped at the college in Ethiopia. And so when I got to, when I met Craig, I told him that this was probably going to be our path. And it was because I dealt with something called PCOS, and I'm actually pretty private about that. But I did blog a little bit about how nutrition has helped me heal from that. But when I was younger, I was told that it was probably going to be a hardship for me, but it wasn't anything that I let get me down really. But because it was just seen as, okay, this is what I was meant to do. And it was more of a, like, my husband was like, okay, that's great. And then he was the one who suggested, well, let's talk to your pastor Dan about this. And he just talked about Ethiopia, and the orphanages there are, a lot of times people think of them as a depressive, the kids are, in a fenced area, and it wasn't like that at all. These children were loved. They cried when we brought our children back to the United States, the nannies. They just wept for, especially Micah, because he was there the longest. But it was a really good process for us.
And you write a lot on your blog about how long the process took. Tell us about that.
Well, I might actually cry, but yeah, it was really difficult. We started adopting, and then along with a lot of other families, we hit an economic downturn. My husband lost his job. And at the time, I was a rock climbing guide, so I made no money. I just did what I love to do. Even though I went to school to be a nutritionist, I just didn't follow that path because I always was like, nope, I'm going to be a mom. We want to homeschool our kids. That's just what we want to do. When he lost his job, I was encouraged to, get a real job. And I absolutely love my job now. But at the time we had to put everything on hold. All the money that we spent basically went poof into the air because we had to start over. So that was, a big hit on our end with that. But then, my nutrition business just took off like a banshee. I started, I love to write recipes. I love food, and I always will love food. So I was writing these recipes down for my clients and putting them in a binder. And some people heard about all of these recipes, and they said, could I buy one of those binders from you? And someone mentioned, well, why don't you just, make a cookbook and you could help raise money for your adoption? So I started doing that. And my mom gave me a copy about a month ago of my first cookbook. And it looks like, one of those underground church cookbooks.
Yeah.
And just how different it is now. And I'm in the process of editing my next book right now, and how intense that is compared to what that book was. But it was a lot of love that went into that book. And the community here was so awesome. They, even if they weren't really interested in nutrition and stuff, they would buy a book just to, help us out, which was a blessing. And Craig got a job at the, and then we started the process again because he was the one with insurance because I was working from home. And so we started up again, and, all was well. But at the time, I guess it's hard to explain how this happened. So Ethiopia changed their laws. So you have to go visit your children, but then you go home for a few weeks. You can't bring them back to the United States. It's kind of you have to go there twice to visit them, or you could stay there. And I thought about staying there the whole time. But luckily I didn't, because our paperwork was flagged just because I met Micah's birth mother, and my oldest, and her story kept changing, and her story was a very sad one, and it was understandable why her story did change. But because it did change, they thought maybe she was selling a baby, or, something wasn't right with that story. And also our youngest son, he was just found by a statue when he was a newborn. And there needs to be a second party to verify that it wasn't.
That is what happened.
That is what happened. And so both of our paperworks with both the children, the United States didn't want to let them into the U.S.
Yeah.
So it took a lot longer. So we met them in May of, was it 2011? I'm terrible with dates. And then we finally, it was days before Thanksgiving that year. They said, okay, you can go get them and bring them back. And we're like, huh? And it's so funny because I would weep for these children that I met. And then when they said, okay, you can bring them back, I was like, oh, huh? I'm not ready. What? And it was just crazy how that flipped. And I was really scared at the time.
What do you think you were scared of?
I guess, I'm not exactly sure, but I had a lot of freedom. And here I was in my 30s, and I was like, you get set in your ways. And I was afraid I was, maybe not going to be the best mom I could be, or, I love to go kayaking and, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, none of that's going to happen anymore. But it does. It does.
So I definitely want to talk more about that. But I have a question. Between the time that you started the whole process and then the time that you actually brought the boys home, what changed in you?
More than anything, I think that a lot of times as mothers, there's times when, I just need a break, or, something like that. And I think that waiting period really made me celebrate each day with them. Not every minute is enjoyable, but I will say that I do feel gratitude a little bit every day. And it's not even something I have to tell myself to think about. It just happens. There was so much grief in the years waiting up to bring them home that, even if I do have those moments where I need to take a mommy time out in the closet, that quickly passes, and, they do something goofy, and it's like, okay, there it is. That's what I love. And I think that's what really, it was almost like it was meant to be. My mom said the coolest thing to me when we were in that waiting period, and Craig lost his job, and I was just totally down. She said, well, Maria, your babies just weren't born yet.
Oh.
And I wept, and I'll never forget that, because I really believe these two were born for me. Like, they really were. Like, it was really difficult at first. When I first held Micah at the orphanage, they kind of threw us in this dark room and made him sit on my lap, and he cried for about 3 hours straight. And my husband walked into the room he was holding baby Kai, who was just a tiny baby and quiet as a mouse. And I looked at him while I was holding this toddler that's screaming in my ear. And I was like, what did we do? This kid hates me. But of course, he's just scared. He didn't see very many white people. And here they kind of forced him to sit on my lap, a stranger's lap. And he's only, 2 years old. And I said, this is ridiculous. I'm sitting in this dark room. I don't even want to be inside. So I took my little boy Micah outside and we played soccer. It was kind of funny because I was playing catch with him. And the adult males there were like, you can't touch the ball.
Because they thought like soccer? Like
yeah. They're like, what is this lady doing? But here we play a lot of football and that type of stuff. But to them, it's all about kicking it with your feet. So it was kind of fun. And then he, within, 10 minutes, this little boy was totally attached to me because I just, our love language is the same. We love to play sports and be outside. And it was like an immediate bond once I got out of that room. But I'll never forget. I almost wish I would have had a little bit of videotape of that to remember just how scared he was and just how innocent this little boy was. But I was scared too, as like, oh my gosh, he hates me.
Yeah. Well, and I think that even with my 3 kids, having not gone through the adoption process, I have those fears too. And I think I'm curious, what do you think are the things that non-adoptive parents, like someone even like myself, well-intentioned, what are the things that we maybe say or do that just kind of rub you like, I wish you understood? Because I think that a lot of us who have friends that either are going through the process or have, we don't really know what the things are so then we kind of tiptoe because we don't want to offend. Yeah. So what would you say to that?
The biggest thing is, I'll say, it didn't bother me so much when they were little and didn't understand. But right now my children are 5 and 7. And people will ask right in front of me, are they brothers? And I'll say, why, sure they are. And I just smile, And what's difficult is, they understand what you just asked. And they're like, why would someone ask that? And so it gets us into a conversation, which we need to have anyway. But we talk about that they were born in other women's bellies and, that type of stuff. But, we'll be at brunch and a stranger will totally ask that. And it's like, the proper way to ask that was probably be not in front of them and say, are they, were they born of the same woman or, I don't know, but
just not in front of these children who are, right. Yeah. That makes so much sense.
And I know some people are just trying to make conversation, but my question is, does it really matter? Like, why is that a big deal? I don't know. Why do you want to know?
Right. I mean, I feel like that would be the same as if someone asked me, like, do your kids all have the same dad? Like what? Right? It's like, true. That's kind of none of your business. So, right. Yeah, totally.
Right. I guess I'm more patient. My husband gets kind of offended with some of the questions, but I guess I just see it as that's something that my mom would have totally asked. And she's so loving and doesn't mean anything bad by it, but that's something that it's kind of like tailgating. I'm like, honey, that's probably someone like my mom who doesn't even know she's doing it. Like,
Yeah.
It's probably innocent.
Yeah. And we have, I've gotten quite a few emails from women that either have adopted or are thinking about it. And I wonder were there any online like blogs or resources or books that were helpful to you that you could recommend?
It was more people rather than being online. It was more, I met people in the community and just meeting with them face to face. If you know somebody who's gone through it, I met this really awesome woman who thought that she was only going to be an adoptive mom because she told she was going to have fertility issues. And here she was in the process of adopting her 3rd child, I think. And when they went over to, I think it was India, she immediately got sick. And she thought it was a parasite because we all had Giardia when we went to Ethiopia and stuff. But as it turns out, she was pregnant with twins.
Oh, with twins? Oh my gosh! So she has 5 children now. Oh my gosh!
What she really opened up my eyes to, because I was really nervous about like I told you, at first when I held Micah, he cried for 3 hours. And she said, you know what? It was more scary to have her own children because here this strange thing was growing inside of her. And you really, when you're talking one-on-one, there's you break down and you talk about the truth and all of the scary things that happen. And it's really a blessing to have that one-on-one, I would say, versus a blog or reading a book, because I think people are filtered. But she said, no, she's like, here, these alien things were growing inside me where I got to meet my adoptive children first and prepare and get to know them. Like, you got pictures every week and sometimes videos, which was a blessing. And it mentally prepared you for who they were, where she's like, I didn't know what was going to come out of me. It was scary. So it was neat to hear her talk about it that way. And I took that actually, quite literally, I looked at their pictures and kind of, got to know their personality and felt like it was a blessing that I got to experience this rather than feel that, oh, I don't get to carry a baby.
Yeah, I like that perspective. And so now the boys have been home for how long?
Oh, man. So Micah's 7 now, and he was 2.5. So, it just feels like it's been forever. But yet at the same time, when I look at those pictures, it seems like it was yesterday at the same time.
And since you had so much time to, look at their pictures and to think about them, and now that they're home and you guys are all family, how is mothering different than what you had anticipated or thought it might be?
I guess I wish I could go back when they're babies, and because I was pretty overwhelmed. My husband traveled for work and we don't have any family in the area. Having a baby and a toddler thrown all at you at once, and both of them are fighting for your attention. So here I'm, trying to write recipes and all of that type of stuff, trying to cook, and I have to hold a baby and hold a toddler's hand because he's getting jealous. And so there's a picture of me trying to cook because we got home to the United States the night before Thanksgiving that year. And so we immediately crashed as soon as we came home, and we woke up to Thanksgiving. And so I was like, well, I'm going to try to make Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah, right, Maria. So my husband took pictures of me. I'm in my jammies holding a baby and a toddler's hand trying to stir this. I don't even know what was on the stove at the time, but it was pretty amusing. But I guess, I was overwhelmed a lot. And I often look at young mothers that have, maybe a toddler and a baby, and I just kind of wink at them and say, it gets easier. And I would give my arm and a leg to go back to holding, those babies and rocking them, because they're getting to that age where, if I give them a kiss, they're like, oh, Mom.
Yep.
So I would just say, suck up those little moments and, I don't know, just take a lot of pictures and videos because it goes by in a flash.
Maria's interview isn't over yet, but did you know that each episode of the podcast has a free journaling sheet that comes with it? They're called Soul Worksheets, and you can find them at soulworkformoms.com. Each sheet includes the episode's soul work action step, something that you can do to continue on your soul work journey. This season, our guests are sharing an actionable step that has really helped them on their own personal journey. Each soul worksheet also includes several journaling prompts that are specifically tailored to the topics of that week's show. So, to get your free soul worksheet each and every episode, just go to soulworkformoms.com. I'd like to ask you about just Ethiopia and your ties to Ethiopia and where that place is in your heart and what that looks like for your family.
Yeah. Whenever Ethiopia Day comes around, their type of 4th of July type celebrations, we'll make different foods in the color of their flag or something like that. But we do often, we'll talk about it. It's easier now than it was in the past. Micah's birth name is Basufakid, and he did not like to, that's his middle name now. and he didn't like to talk about it. And he wasn't really into watching those videos because this is his life now. And not that he had a bad life there, but he had a lot of transition. He first was with his birth mother and then with his grandmother. And then he went to a orphanage, and then he went to the foster home that we moved him to. We moved him there because there was only 30 kids and, a doctor was on staff and stuff like that. But so there was a lot of transition for him, and he just didn't want to even go there. So it was a sensitive subject at first, but now we talk about it. And I do wish that he talked in Emmerich when he was just 2.5, and we have little video, which I wish we would have done more because they were kind of random times, and he would just all of a sudden talk in this language. I was like, look, this is so cute, and I wish that we would have thought about it more. There was only a few words that we learned in Ethiopia, or in Emmerich, I should say, like Odahalo means I love you and stuff. But that was an interesting part too, is that I had this toddler that didn't speak the same language as me, and people were like, well, how did you communicate? And it's like, you just know when they needed something, when he had to go to the bathroom, when he needed some food, you knew when he needed water. You knew when he wanted to go play ball. We didn't even need communication. And I think that brought us closer together because you really had to be aware of what they wanted. But Ethiopia, is definitely a place that we both, my husband and I, talk about going back with them, maybe when they're young teenagers, just to show them where they came from. I guess what hit me is we met a lot of, when they're about 12 years old, they're kicked out of the orphanages and they become shoe shine boys. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot. And they're the sweetest kids. And they shine your shoes. They try to shine my flip-flops just for food or like when we would leave the grocery store, we would always hand stuff out because they weren't rude. They weren't mean. They were sweet kids. And, here they are trying to shine my dirty flip-flops. And it was just sweet.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your older son didn't like watching the videos. And I'm curious if you are willing to speak about how you talk about, or do you talk about adoption or the process with your children?
Yeah, we definitely are open to it. We talk about it. It may even come up once a week, especially when it comes to their color, because my younger son is darker than my older, and I never thought of color as being an issue because, we homeschool, we live out in the woods, and we're not, I don't know, it's just we don't really discuss it, so I didn't think it'd be a big deal, but it is. And even at these young ages, and I thought did some kid say something about their color or something? But no, they're aware of it. And they're like, oh, look how dark he is. They want to be darker, They're like, oh, I wish I was as dark as that guy. And, they'll try to tan in the sun to get darker. And then they also thought that as they grew older, they were going to turn white. And so that was a conversation that we had to have, that, man, you are so beautiful. And the people of Ethiopia are so beautiful. When you go there, they are just the most beautiful people. And other people that have adopted it, they told me that before I went, but it really is. They're just these striking people. And they come up to us in the United States too. And they're like, your sons are from Ethiopia, aren't they? And I said, yeah. And they're like, you can tell they have that beautiful face. And I'm like, I know they do. They really do. And it's the spirit, too, of Ethiopia that they carried with them. It's kind of sad that when we first went there, we would see men holding hands. And I just thought, oh, well, maybe they have maybe a large gay community. Not that it was a big deal. I just thought, all of these men were holding hands down the street. But no, that's what they do. They hold hands. They hug. I was at a restaurant once, and like I told you, we had Giardia, and I had my head down on the table. I didn't feel good. The waiter, he was hugging me and can I get you something, miss? And that's just the way they are. They hug and they kiss. And They hold hands, they're always touching. And my boys brought that here. And I don't know how that happened because, I mean, I'm a stoic German woman that we didn't grow up with that. Neither did my husband. And so I don't know. We are now because it's important to them. We take a walk after dinner every night, and it's always like we always have to hold hands, or like, you know, it's just that's the way it is. And
I love it. Yeah,
I don't know how these toddlers and babies, I mean, the little experience they had with it, it's really important to them.
Cool. I wonder, do you have any worries for your children that you think are unique?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do. You hear a lot about, you know, police shootings and racial profiling. And there was one maybe a year ago with a little boy. He was shot and he had a hood on. And my husband showed me a picture of him, and it looked just like the picture we have of Micah with his hood up. And it's really sad that I have to go there, but I am going to have to teach them that I want you to be upstandable citizens. And if you do get pulled over when you're driving a car, it's sad that we have to go there, but it's true.
I mean, it's so heavy.
It is,
and
because I have family members that are police officers, and it's not always that case. But if it does happen, you know, just prove them wrong. Just, you know.
Yeah. And switching gears a little bit, what advice do you have for anyone that's thinking about starting down the path of adoption?
I have my best friend, she's in the process of adopting right now. I just tell her to really suck up that time with her husband, Matt, because I remember being so sad when everything was like crumbling apart. And I've learned from that, where I guess someone told me, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him what you have planned. And it's my whole life. I mean, Michelle, you know, I mean, my whole life has been like not any, and I'm a planner. And so I think it was like all happening for a reason. Like, you cannot plan so much, Maria, because it's not going to happen the way you want it to.
Right.
Things are going to turn out better than you thought it was, you know, going to, or, you know, it's all in the stars. But when I was so devastated and crying, I wish I would have spent more time just celebrating our marriage and taking care of each other. Well, not that we didn't, but, you know, like going on dates and not crying about the children, because that whole summer after we met them in May, it was really tough. And I wish, instead of being sad about it, like thinking like, when are they going to call us? When can we go get them? Being like, okay, let's go on a kayak ride, or, you know, let's go on a date and stuff. So I guess I would tell people that, you know, maybe your baby wasn't born yet.
Love it. What has adoption taught you about yourself?
It totally let me know that I was more of a planner than I ever thought I was, and that you really can't plan for what your family's going to look like, whether you have them, you know, by giving birth or adoption. You just can't plan that. Life happens, and it forms and it shapes you, and you change and you evolve. And it also taught me to really celebrate those small moments. I used to always be like, okay, so what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do the next day? Like I told you, I'm a planner, like, let's go. And last night we were down by the river, and I just had to stop for a moment and just like be present. And it really taught me to be present and enjoy the moment that I'm in, rather than even in yoga, I'll be like, okay, after yoga, I'm going to go to the grocery store and it's like quiet your mind. And it taught me to do that for sure.
Maria, what is one thing that you want all mothers to know?
I would say that there's a lot of days that I feel like I was yelling all day at them, because we homeschool, and so we're always the disciplinarian. And I feel like some days are just like, oh, can we do that one over? There was a day last week that I was like, man, this was just such a terrible day. I feel like I yelled at them all day. They're going to grow up thinking I'm just like a mean mommy. And my son Kai, he is the goofball, and he's like, that was a great day. I was like, are you kidding? Because I think like I took him to the zoo and it was just chaos and not like nothing was going right. And that was a great day. So even though you think that you may be not doing your best or, losing your cool, they don't feel that way. And I often feel like, oh, I wish I would spend more. I wish I would be doing like these special things with them. And my husband often tells me, he's like, did your mom play football with you, Maria? Did your mom I take my son, bow hunting is right now. And
oh, cool.
The kids aren't old enough to bow hunt, but my older one is definitely calmer and can sit and watch the deer with me up in the tree stand. And my husband's like, really? You need to spend more time with them because you just sat in a deer stand with them. Like, I still feel that. I think we all feel like we don't do enough for our kids.
Absolutely. But
my husband's like, are you kidding? He's like, no, don't even think. He's like, you do yoga with your kids. He's like, come on now.
Yeah, I wonder, is that a generational thing? Because I remember asking my grandmother once after I had my third child, and I just looked at her. She had 3 children, and I said, how did you do this? This is so hard. And she just looked at me and she said, it's not hard. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. But then when I talked to her more, I realized she wasn't trying to do all of these things that I was doing. She's like, you wake up, you get them dressed, they go play in the yard, and you cook your meals. What is hard about that? And that really resonates because, man, we just feel like...
I know. I do think that it is a bit generational. My parents never came to my sporting events, even when I was in high school. And now when, your toddlers are playing soccer, that wasn't even a thing when I was a kid.
Right.
But I guess I don't want to go to my grave thinking, I wish I would have spent more time with them. Yeah. And they are my little buddies, and I feel a lot of joy when I'm with them. So I guess yesterday I was blessed enough to go kayaking down this beautiful river by myself and have a little alone time. My husband lets me do that once in a while when, things are getting, stressful with work and stuff. If there's a beautiful day, I like to do that. But the whole time I kind of miss them. And I couldn't wait till the day they could come with me. It's too fast of a river. It's not safe for them. But I find joy being with them. Even if it's the day at the zoo where I'm yelling all the time and stuff, it's still those memories that those days you're never going to get back those days. So I tell a lot of people to simplify their life and try to make every day a little bit special. It doesn't have to be all day special, but I'll take them down fishing they love to fish, and we'll just go for maybe a half an hour. And, instead of watching TV or something, the average American watches so much. I think that on average is 3 hours of TV, take a half an hour and go do something a little special. It doesn't have to cost any money, but you're never going to get that day back. And so I really try to, make every day a little bit special, even if it's playing a board game or something, but they will remember that.
So many thanks to Maria Emmerich for sharing her story with us today. She talked about a lot of personal things, and I'm really appreciative of her vulnerability and her honesty. A lot of what Maria talked about revolved around the idea of shifting perspectives. She told us what her mother said to her that helped her when she was waiting for the okay to bring her boys home. She talked about the conversation she had with a friend that helped her to shift her perspective, to not be so sad about not experiencing being pregnant with her children. And so it comes to no surprise to me that the soul work action step that she is suggesting is this quote about gratitude. Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos into order, confusion into clarity. It turns problems into gifts, failures into success, the unexpected into perfect timing, and mistakes into important events. Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. So this week, try to read that quote to yourself in the morning each day. You can find that quote on the top of this week's Soul Worksheet, which is available for free at soulworkformoms.com. That's also where you'll find links to Maria's website and cookbooks, which, by the way, I have her latest cookbook and I absolutely love it. And as always, thank you for being a faithful listener. But more importantly, thank you for being willing to engage in your personal and spiritual growth, your soul work, because mothering really is a spiritual practice. And when you heal your wounds and find connection with the wholeness that is within you, you heal the world. And that is evolution through mothering. I'm Michelle Duncan-Wilson. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.